payment of $1,300 for wages and salaries was entered correctly in the cash book but as 3,100 in the wages and salaries account. This is equation. If you observe, the difference is 3,100 minus 1,300. The cash book entry was correct and the difference is $1,800. That is $3,100 minus $1,300. That gives us $1,800. This can be regarded as error of undercast in the wages and salaries account. Now, wages and salaries of $1,300 has been correctly entered in the cash book but was mistakenly entered in the wages and salaries account as $3,100. The difference is $1,800. That is $3,100 minus $1,300. The error actually occurred in the wages and salaries account. That means that the cash book has no problem here. So how do we correct the error? So recall that wages and salaries account is an account that usually has a debit balance. This means that this error will affect the trial balance on the debit side by increasing the trial balance with $1,800 on the debit side. So the question is, how do we correct this error? We establish a wages and salaries account as our workings. Since the wages and salaries account has been overcasted by 1,800 on the debit side, to correct it, this $1,800 has to be deducted. And how do we do it? We credit the wages and salaries account with the equivalent of $1,800. Remember that the assumption is that this error has already occurred in a figure not shown to us. On the credit side of the wages account, we raise a suspense account 1,800. So this error will be corrected by crediting the wages and salaries account with $1,800, that is raising a suspense account. And the suspense account will be debited with $1,800. So this error will just be corrected by going to the suspense account and debiting the suspense account with $1,800, while the wages and salaries account will be credited with $1,800. Of course, debiting the suspense account with $1,800 shows that this error has succeeded in increasing the debit side of the trial balance by $1,800, and that is why it is placed at the debit side of the suspense account. Then we make our narrations. We credit the wages and salaries account with $1,800. Since the error has occurred here as an overcast of $1,800, to minus the $1,800 as correction, we credit the wages and salaries account with suspense account, and we raise the suspense account. Therefore, since the wages and salaries account has been credited with suspense account of $1,800, we go to the suspense account and debit the suspense account with $1,800 from wages and salaries account. This means that this wages and salaries account has succeeded in increasing the debit side of the trial balance, and that is why any figure that increases the trial balance of the debit side will be placed at the debit side of the suspense account. Now, in the journal, we have suspense account debited with $1,800 and the wages and salaries account credited with $1,800. Then our narration is, being wages and salaries account of $1,300 wrongly debited in the wages and salaries account now corrected. 5. Question 5. An invoice of $5,230 received from a supplier was entered correctly in the purchases day book but was posted to the debit side of the supplier's personal account. An invoice of $5,230 received from a supplier was entered correctly in the purchases day book but was posted to the credit side of the supplier's account. Now, an invoice of $5,230 received from a supplier shows that the goods was purchased on credit and has been correctly recorded in the purchases day book. Once it is correctly recorded in the purchases day book, it means that the purchases account will also receive the same correct balance, that the purchases account will also be correctly debited. This means that the purchase account has been debited with $5,230, which is the actual correct entry. However, whenever goods are purchased, the purchases account is debited while the suppliers or payables account will be credited. But rather than crediting the payables account, that is the supplier's account, was debited. This error is error of double debiting. Instead of debiting one account and crediting the other account, the two accounts were debited. And when this occurs in account, it leads to error that multiplies such figure on that side. So how do we correct this error? Remember that payables account has credit balances, and this figure is supposed to be recorded on the credit side of the payables account. Now that it has been debited instead of being credited, the first thing we do is to cancel the debit balance that has been wrongly made. And thereafter, we post the $5,230 in the correct place, that is the credit side of the payables account. So to correct this error, we'll be using $5,230 twice on the credit side of the payables account. That is, the first $5,230 we cancel the debit balance that have been wrongly made in the payables account. Then the next $5,230, we now record this entry on the correct side of the payables account. Let's go to the board. Now, from the equation, we are using these two accounts as our workings. The invoice of $5,230 received from a supplier was entered correctly in the purchases daybook, which means that the purchase account has been correctly debited with $5,230 from payables. This account is correct and we have no problem with this. Where the error occurred is in the payables account, that is supplier's account. What we mean is this. This is the actual record that was made. Usually payables account are supposed to be credited, but it has now been debited. That is the error. So to correct this entry, the first thing we do is to cancel this wrong entry on the debit side. And how do we do it? To minus $5,230 from this payables account, in order to erase this wrong debiting, we have to credit this account firstly with $5,230. When we do it, that means this has cancelled out. So by posting $5,230 on the credit side of this payables account, this account has been cancelled. This error has been cancelled because $5,230 minus $5,230 gives us 0. If you want to initiate balance CD in this account, you cannot, because $5,230 minus $5,230 will give us 0. So we have now cancelled this wrong debiting with $5,230 on the credit side. This is the first thing we do. And how do we do it? So we now rightly credit the payables account with $5,230 goods sent to purchases account. Of course, the purchases account has been debited. So in correcting this error, we use $5,230 twice. The first $5,230 was to erase the wrong debiting made in the payables account. Then the second $5,230 is to place the entry at the right side, that is the credit side of the payables account. So the total amount we use in correcting this error is $10,460. That is $5,230 twice. And that means that on the credit side of the payables account, we raise the suspense of $10,460. You can see suspense account. That is the place we are correcting the error. And we use the word suspense. Now, what this means is that to correct this error, we are crediting the payables account with $10,460. And therefore, since the payables account has been credited so that this error can be corrected, the suspense account will now be debited with $10,460. What it implies is that this error of $10,460 has succeeded in increasing the trial balance by $10,460 on the debit side. So we are going to place this $10,460 on the debit side of the suspense account. Remember that the error resulted in overcast in the payables account on the debit side. It means that the debit side has been increased by 10,460. That is exactly what we showed here. Because a figure that is not here was brought here. One, this side is already short by 5,230. And this side is not supposed to bear the 5,230, but the figure has been recorded here. What it means is that this side has been short with 5,230 twice, because the figure that is supposed to be here has been shifted to this side, while it is not here. So you can see how we corrected it. Firstly, 5,230 was recorded on the credit side to correct this error, to bring it back to this side and correct it. Secondly, the main 5,230 was now recorded. What it means is that by recording something you are supposed to record here on this side, you have reduced this side by twice of the figure. And that is exactly what we have proved here. What this means is very simple. I was told to give you $5,230. Instead of giving you the $5,230, I came and collected $5,230 from you. What I have robbed you is not $5,230, but $5,230 twice. Because I was supposed to give you $5,230, and I removed and I collected it from you, $5,230. So for me to correct this error, the first thing I will do, that $5,230 that I collected from you, I'll give it back to you. And secondly, I will now give you $5,230. That means to right my wrong, I will have to give you $5,230 twice. This is exactly what happened in this error. Rather than crediting an account, we debited the account. What really happened is that by doing this, we have robbed that side of twice that figure. And that means that the debit side has been increased by twice of that figure. Something that is supposed to be on the credit side but is not there means that that credit side has been robbed of a figure. And that figure is now placed on the debit side, which has already received its own figure, because the purchase account has been debited with $5,230. The debit side has already seen $5,230. And again, you are not debiting the corresponding account with $5,230. This means that you have increased the debit side with twice of that figure. That is 10,460, because you have debited twice the debit side of an account. Usually in double entry, once an account is debited, the other account will be credited. But you have debited twice, that means you have increased the debit side twice. That is 10,460. And this is why, to correct such error, 10,460 was placed on the credit side of the account. Remember that since this error has led to increasing the debit side of the account with 10,460, and the logic in Suspense account is that any account that succeeds in increasing either the debit side or the credit side, the same figure that was used in increasing that side will be posted to that side of the Suspense account. And since this error has succeeded in increasing the debit side by 10,460, that is why we are debiting the Suspense account with 10,460. And to correct that error, the payables account was credited with 10,460. So to correct this error, the Suspense account is debited with 10,460, while the payables account is credited with 10,460. In the journal entry, the same will be done there. We debit the Suspense account with $10,460 and credit the payables account with $10,460. Then we make our narration. Now, we have the Suspense account debited with $10,460 as a result of correction in the trade payables account. Of course, we already know that the trade payables account has been credited with $10,460. So in our journal entry, the Suspense account will be debited with $10,460, while the trade payables account will be credited with $10,460. Remember that these two accounts are not needed. We have used these two accounts as workings since we are still in our foundation stage. Now let us go to the journal. We have the Suspense account debited with $10,460, while the trade payables account is credited with $10,460. This was what we actually did in correcting this error. Now our narration is being credit purchases of $5,230 wrongly debited to supplier's account, now corrected. Question 6. A motor vehicle was bought for $1,300 and payment was made by check. This fact was recorded only in motor vehicle account. We are told in this question that a motor vehicle was purchased for $1,300 and this was recorded only in the motor vehicle's account. When we purchase motor vehicle with check, the cash book will be credited, that is bank column will be credited for giving out the money for the purchases, while the motor vehicle account will be debited. In this question, we are told that the motor vehicle account has been debited accordingly. That means in the motor vehicle's account, there was no problem. This error is known as error of single entry. That means one account has been debited while the other account has not been credited, or one account may be credited and the other account has not been debited. The account that did not receive any recording is the cash book, that is the bank column, which means that the credit side of an account has been reduced or bereft of $1,300. Once the credit side of an account witness a reduction or absence of $1,300, it means that the debit side of the trial balance will be increased by such amount. How do I mean? Since the motor vehicle account has received the debit balance of $1,300 and the credit side of the cash book did not receive such amount, it means that since the credit side is witnessing absence of $1,300, the debit side of the trial balance will increase by $1,300, since it was only the debit side that received the entry. Since the cash book is where the error occurred, that means the credit side was not credited with $1,300. When we open account recognizing the cash book, the bank column will be credited with $1,300. That is suspense account. That means that this error will be corrected on the credit side of the cash book, that is the bank column. When we raise the suspense account on the credit side, then the suspense account will be debited with equivalent $1,300, showing that this error has resulted in increasing the debit side of the trial balance. Remember we said that any error that leads to increase on the debit side, such error will be posted to the debit side of the suspense account. And any error that results in increasing the credit side of an account, that error will be posted to the credit side of the suspense account. This error has resulted in increasing the debit side because in this error, it was only the debit side that was debited, while the corresponding credit entry that is supposed to be made in the cash book was never made. Meaning that this reduction on the credit side by $1,300 has led to increase on the debit side of this transaction by $1,300. So we credit the cash book bank column with $1,300 and debit the suspense account with $1,300. And in the journal entry, the same will be made. The suspense account will be debited with $1,300, while the cash book bank column will be credited with $1,300. This error can be corrected by crediting the cash book, that is bank column, with $1,300. You can see it, suspense, since this record was not made. And since the cash book has been credited with $1,300, that is suspense, then the suspense account will be debited with $1,300. That is as a result of the record in the bank account, that is cash book bank column. Of course, this error has resulted in increasing the debit side of the trial balance by $1,300, and that is why it is posted to the debit side of the suspense account. Let us pass our journal entry. Now, to pass the journal entry, The suspense account will be debited with $1,300, while the bank account, that is cash book bank code, will be credited with $1,300. Then our narration being cost of motor vehicle paid by check omitted in the cash book now corrected.